Right, I believe we're live and in session for a Portugal Club special with Jeremy College, who is I just found out he is a Portugal fan as much as he is a Qigong fanatic. So looking forward to chatting with him. This is a Portugal Club special if you'd like to join us on these special evenings. And we hang out with Portugal Club members thereafter, after we've done a recording and they get a chance to speak to our special guests. Sign up at theportugalclub.com. So as is customary on the Good Morning Portugal show and in this environment, a lovely big round of applause for Jeremy. Hi, Jeremy. How you doing?
Right. Well, gosh, yeah, I'm not used to a round of applause, that's for sure.
That crowd, what are they like? Stay back, everybody. Great to meet you and chat with you tonight.
Yeah,
How did
thank you very much.
You joined our digital creators group, I think. People who are
I did, that's right.
involved. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first thing that kind of drew me. I saw that group and suddenly thought, oh, here's somebody to talk to in Portugal. And yeah, now I find myself here on your show.
Well, that was quick. There you were, just trying to find a bit about digital creators and social media, and here you are on our Portugal Club special recording. Thanks for being here, much appreciated. And spookier still, I think we've ended up living in the same town here in Portugal as well, haven't we?
Well, I'm in San Martinho de Porto, and I know there's lots of San Martinos. Is that the same one you're in?
Yeah, it is. So there's a big lag on this recording, strangely. We are in the same town here, with Nazaré to the north and Foz de Relho and Celia de Porto to our south here. Brilliant. Well, how did you get to choose San Martinho de Porto in Portugal? Can you tell us about that before we get into the health benefits and vitality benefits of Qigong?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those strange stories. My ex-wife moved to Portugal. I was married for 16 years to a Brazilian lady who was, so eu falo português do Brasil. I don't speak Portuguese from around these parts, unfortunately. It's very kind of like difficult for me to attune my ear, so I'm still working on that. But yeah, I'd had a few holidays here in Portugal because I really, liked the place. And then my daughter decided to come down here with her grandchildren. And so I thought, everything seems to be pointing in the direction of Portugal. Wow. In another strand, I met a friend on a retreat course, and her mother has an amazing piece of land in Alentejo. And I've been sort of thinking, gosh, maybe one day I might be able to open a retreat center in Portugal. And so this was another kind of, my ears pricked up when I heard about this amazing land in Alentejo. And so everything was just kind of pointing in that direction. And my marriage had come to an end, and I was just thinking, well, what am I going to do with my life? And so I thought, well, I'll go and have a look around Portugal.
Like you do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it just seemed like a sort of an obvious idea for me. Yes. And I have an old camper van, so I decided to drive all the way down through France, drive all the way down through Spain, and then drive my way around Portugal. And yeah, I mean, I looked at Portugal and I thought, okay, what do I know about Portugal? I'd been up in the north, and I'd been in Braga, and I'd been chatting to a taxi driver up there, and a Brazilian guy. And he said to me, yeah, sometimes when it's cold or when there's some snow, and I just sort of said, hang on a minute, let me stop. Snow? And he went, oh yeah, sometimes we get snow in the north. So I kind of took a map and I drew a line across the top. I mean, I just thought, I've been living in the snow and the cold for the last, for all of my life, most of it. And I thought, why would I want to move back to that? Okay, so I cut off the top of Portugal. And then I thought about the south, and I knew about the Algarve, having been there a few times. And I know about the kind of drought problems that they have. So I kind of thought, right, I'm going to draw a line across there, cut off and cut them off. And then a friend had been telling me about fires. So I thought, right, well, I'm going to cut off the fire zone as well.
What are you ending up with this?
That's it. So the box is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And it sort of basically ran from Setúbal up to about Coimbra, and then out to the coast, and a sort of a line down the middle of Portugal. And so then I started to drive round and round. I visited all the cities, most of the little towns. And I came back through Caldas several times. and thought, oh, I really like this town. In another world, and I'm going to do a blatant piece of advertising here. In another world, I've started a petanque club in Caldash because I love petanque.
Yeah.
I played in the UK. Well, I've played in the UK all of my life, basically all my adult life, and so I'm crazy about it. And so I thought, well, as I was driving through Caldash, my partner said to me, "Oh, look, they've had a petanque tournament here in Caldash before." I thought that's interesting, and then I also saw, oh, but Caldash has got a rugby club as well, and those are the two sort of things that I love, that they entertain me. I play petanque, I like to watch rugby, and I'm thinking, gosh, this town seems to have everything. And so after a bit of consideration, I really thought Setúbal was going to be the place I was going to land, and somehow the property story just didn't work out there. I was looking to rent something to take a while to figure out what to do. Couldn't find anything there at all. And then I came back to Caldish for a few days and thought, do I want to live in the middle of town? I thought, no, I don't actually. I think I'd like to be near a city, but not in it. And then something came up in San Martino, and that was it. It just dropped into place. You have to follow the breadcrumb trail.
Yeah.
And so, that's what led me here. Long story, but that's how I ended up in this.
No problem with a long story. I mean, it's lovely to have a leisurely chat with you, and it's a really fascinating story. And your instincts are obviously pretty good, aren't they? In how you can home in and find out what you want.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yes, if we're talking about from an energy perspective,
yes,
yes, it feels very, very good here for me. I feel as we would say in Qigong, I feel the Qi, I feel the energy of this place. And it feels very, the whole of Portugal feels incredibly calm and relaxed to me. I love that. And it was my ex-wife's partner who said to me, do you know what I like about being in Portugal? And I sort of thought, I wonder what he's going to say. And he said, it reminds me of all the best things of the 1970s. And I thought, I quite like that as an idea.
Yeah.
And it does. And it feels relaxed. Having just come from London, it feels like a police state these days, the amount of control that goes on. I was back there a couple of months ago. I got 3 parking violations, roads that I'd always driven up and down that have suddenly become impassable for some local neighborhood reason or whatever. A car park that I've always been able to park in, they changed the regulations. It just felt like everything is so hyper regulated these days. And I guess, with 12 million people all competing for the same thing, you have to, or it's going to be chaos. But, you come back to Portugal, you just kind of, breathe out, it's lovely.
That's amazing and great to hear. The sound you may have heard there is Bob joining us behind the scenes, who we discovered was a big fan of Qigong as well.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, we will talk about that. And Bob, if you've got any questions, pop them into the chat, and we'll make sure they get to Jeremy, or signal that you want to join us on the screen if you do a bit later on. And we will be hanging out. That's what we do at the Portugal Club. After the half hour of chatting with our special guest, we hang out and see what's what, and broaden the conversation, help people out with what their challenges might be here in Portugal, which includes our special guests. If you've got anything to share that you'd like us to help you with as well, Jeremy, be delighted to do that. Need to rewind a little bit to petanque, because strangely enough, we've got a men's shed here in San Martino de Porto, and we were hosted last week, I think it was, or the week before that. Yeah, I think it was the week before that, by a wonderful chap called Karsten, who hosted us beautifully, hospitality-wise, and we did a bit of archery in his garden as well. And he talked about petanque as well. And it'd been a long time since I've heard a mention of petanque, aka boule, right? And it's the metal balls game that's like a bowling game that's played. Most Brits get to find out about it by traveling to France for their holidays, don't they? See the old guys in the town squares playing on sand or sort of rough ground in the middle of the park. And I'm thinking, wow, Dom Carlos Park is very well suited to a game of boule or petanque, isn't it? Is that why they had a tournament?
I'll be there at 2:00 tomorrow morning. Sorry, 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. It's the perfect place to play. And I think that must have been prior to COVID. I saw 2 news reports that suggested in 2017 and 2018 they had something like 150 teams play in a tournament. So I was thinking, God, there must be something around here that, there must be people who want to play. But it's been extraordinarily difficult to get off the ground. I've had 3-4 people turn up. But I suppose, it's going to take a while to get going.
And can you get the kit here? I mean, there's a joke, isn't there, about Paris being the second biggest Portuguese city. There are a lot of Portuguese people in France. So presumably there is that to and fro culturally, which might have brought a few stainless steel balls back into Portugal. Is it a thing? Is it definitely a thing in Portuguese culture? I mean, they love all sports, right?
Yeah, they do. And is it a thing in Portuguese culture? Yes, there is a Portuguese Petanque Federation, I've discovered.
Well,
yeah, exactly. And so but it's played obviously by an awful lot of expats as well. So if you go down to Foz do Aurelia on a Thursday afternoon at 2 or 3, I'm not sure, you'll find there's about 20 or 30 French people who play right on the quay at the front by the campsite. On a Sunday, there's people who play in, I've forgotten the name of it, near Peniche. Baleal, there's three. But for some reason, there's nobody around Caldas, which is really strange. So yeah, I just thought there's an opportunity. I'll get started. It's not the first petanque club I've started. Probably won't be the last. And so
that's amazing. That's amazing. And so that's open to all comers, newcomers to come and join you.
I love teaching people. So I'm very, I teach Qigong, but I also teach petanque as well. And I had an amazing result. I lived in South Africa for about 5 years when I was a young man. And so a South African lady came along to the petanque and she said, you must join this South African WhatsApp group. So I joined it and I started saying, does anybody want to play petanque? And this lady said to me, yeah, I'm not really able because I'm working and all this sort of stuff, but would you like some petanque? And I sort of said, yeah, sure. We cleaned out this house and we found, a few. So I went over to her house and she said, for a small donation, you can have them. And she gave me 6 or 8 sets of petanque, which is extraordinary.
Started the club, basically.
It's an entire club's worth, exactly. So if people don't have their own, I'm very happy to take them down and take them with me. So I've been taking along 3 or 4 sets every Tuesday.
You brought them from South Africa?
No, I know they worked as property developers here in Portugal.
Oh, so
they'd bought a house and found all these petanque in the basement, didn't know what to do with them. And so they said, here's a new home, give them to Jeremy.
Well, that's lovely. It's as though it's what God wants, right?
God wants everybody to play petanque.
Making it really easy for you to do that and spread the word.
That's
incredible.
Right.
Well, that's a lovely bit of added value tonight that we can share here on the Silver Coast, that there is a club. And it's one of those sports that people will have some memory of, and probably a fond one. I remember as a kid, it was the same day I got terribly sunburnt. But I do remember playing late into the evening with some old guys on a French holiday, with my dad going over to France. So I'm sure other people will have good memories like that and be glad to hear the news.
Yeah, everybody has those happy memories. I mean, even if it's just playing with those yellow water-filled ones on the beach as a kid, there's plenty of that. But actually now in the UK, there's hundreds of thousands of players. It's obviously being brought across from France. I used to play in the UK Nationals, where there were 15 different regions with 15 different teams from each region. So it's really big, 300-400 players coming to the national event and things like that. And it's massive in Spain. The world champion is Spanish at the moment.
No way. So it can almost be Olympic. I mean, because most people have it down as a kind of evening thing, like skittles or throwing horseshoes, but it's much more of a sport than that.
Completely, yeah. Of course, all the French colonies play as well, and so you find that there are people who play in Vietnam. Vietnam is huge. There's people playing all over Africa. I'm wondering if that's my internet that's flashing away furiously. No.
I'm not sure. You're back now. It's all fine. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Yeah. So you find people playing all over Africa because of the French colonies, in North Africa, and as I say, Spain, Portugal, Portugal a little bit. It doesn't seem to have got quite so embedded yet, but that's my mission. one
That's
of my
great.
many
Okay. Well, I wasn't expecting to be talking about that tonight, and I wish you all the best with that. And love to come along. It's very accessible. Kids
yeah.
can play, can't they? All ages, all abilities, presumably. And what's
Uh,
the culture? Is it? Do you have a beer and a glass of wine while you're playing? Is that
well, why
why it's so
not? Yeah, why wouldn't you? I mean,
popular?
unfortunately, my drinking days are now behind me. But I used to regularly play with a glass in one hand, fag hanging out my mouth, and that was. It's like darts. It's like
The
outdoor
obvious
darts.
appeal.
Yeah,
Superb. Right. Okay. We better move on from Petonk in Portugal and how you got to be here. I mean, is there anything else you want to say about the culture? I love the story of how you homed in on the area you wanted to be in. And I think the general vibe. I was talking to somebody earlier this morning about how it was like UK in the 70s, what we remember as kids, right?
yeah,
Family culture,
yeah.
drink driving, um, but a social life, a cohesive, coherent social life that has been in many ways lost in the UK, as far as I can work out. But you're loving that. Anything else in Portugal?
I mean, I'm facing the same problems that new people have faced. I find it utterly fascinating that there is, I didn't know that I was going to become a resident in Portugal till the day that my little card turned up. My little card turned up in an envelope with zero instructions whatsoever.
Yeah, all right.
And people just keep on saying to me, it's your responsibility to find out. And he's thinking, well, I don't even know where to start. I've just discovered that I may have a tax problem. I've just discovered I might have a problem with my old van,
Yeah,
And
welcome,
yeah,
welcome.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's just it. You just think to yourself, is it absolutely impossible if what you want is people to come to your country, you want them to come to your country because they're going to bring income with them, you want to make them welcome. Is it totally impossible to create an onboarding process that's actually friendly? Anyway,
Yes,
that's my
Jeremy. Yeah, like a brief answer to that, based on my experience and many others, is
yeah,
yes. It would appear
the answer
so.
is yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm not sure that's looking like it's going to be changing anytime soon.
And that's
And
it. As soon as you
yeah,
realize that, you know, I,
yes.
I lived in Africa, and it's not, dramatically different in mindset.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so on to Qigong then, which is something you're bringing into the culture here. We have, of course, Marian Guerre, who we speak to, who is into TCM, Chinese traditional Chinese medicine, and Qigong.
Okay.
She's learned in mainland China, and she's one of our correspondents. And it's lovely. She's on the Silver Coast. I see her in Caldas. She teaches in Caldas. And
Ah.
it's great to see you here in San Martino de Porto. How did you get into the Eastern way of vitality and working with energy that is Qigong?
Uh, well, I I had a very toxic lifestyle when I was a
Right.
younger man. I worked as a broker in the City of London.
Did you?
Oh yeah, and that was like chaos. I mean, that was proper. It was before Wolf of Wall Street, and that's where they got their ideas from.
Yes.
And so I was right in the thick of that, and I have to say I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was fantastic, but it just about killed me.
Really?
And after about, I don't know, 10 to 12 years, something like that, my then wife, this one who lives down the Algarve now, was a very spiritual person. And she said to me, look, you're going to have to, it coincided with the death of my dad as well. And that sent me
Right.
off an even bigger drinking binge, if that was possible. And
Wow.
and somehow she just said, you're going to have to find something that's going to help you. And so I knew she was right. So I started looking around, and I found Tai Chi. And I really liked Tai Chi. It was very nice, really calming and relaxing. Um, it didn't quite feel like I'd found the right place. And then a friend of mine was a yoga teacher. And so I spent a couple of years. I did probably 2 years of Tai Chi, maybe 2 years of Hatha yoga. And both of them were good, but somehow they just felt like, it wasn't what I was looking for. And just by sheer chance, one day I discovered a book in Foyle's bookshop in London
Mhm.
that said Qigong on it. And I remembered in the back of my head my Tai Chi teachers talking about Qigong, and they're very cheeky. They say things like, it's just a few warm-up exercises, as opposed to telling the actual truth, which is that it's 5,000 years old, and Tai Chi is about 500 years old, and
Yeah.
Tai Chi comes directly from Qigong. But yeah, we'll let them off with that.
Yeah.
And in fact, Qigong is really the root of all Chinese medicine. Acupuncture grows out of it, herbal medicine grows out of it, the entire kind of understanding of energy comes out of it, and Chinese culture is built with that as one of its kind of foundations, really. And so I found this book and I just thought, wow, this makes absolute sense. I started reading it, and it was all about Chinese culture, and it was all about energy and Chinese medicine and things like that. It was only when I got to the very end of the book that I found that there were some exercises. And I thought, oh, I could do these. And I started doing them, and they just fitted into my life so easily. The nice thing about them is that you can do 2 or 3, standalone ones. You can add them and make a set of 10 or 20 or 5 or 3, or, if you've got 10 minutes, you can do 10 minutes worth. If you want to do an hour or 2 hours, you can easily do that as well. So it scales up and scales down. And it worked really well with my, sort of crazy city life. I was able to start using Qigong. And as soon as I did that, my feeling about my working day changed.
Wow.
I suddenly found that I was kind of arriving at work, and instead of wanting to have two fire buckets of coffee and 10 fags, I was arriving alert, awake, and feeling protected in a way, because it's a really hostile environment that I worked in, but suddenly I thought, I just felt like nobody could touch me. It was amazing. So with that kind of, I don't know, force field, mental attitude around me, it was very quick that I was able to actually leave the city and leave that toxic job behind. And I'm quite happy to say Qigong saved my life. It literally saved my life,
I get it. It sounds like it did. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. And in that transition, I mean, it's an amazing film to be made about this, isn't it? Because in The Big Short, you've got that guy who plays the drums, right, while he's sort of figuring out what he's going to do. In the movie where Big Short meets Wolf of Wall Street meets Jeremy College discovering Qigong and changing his life completely, will there be scenes of you like standing out on the fire exit doing Qigong before you re-enter the trading floor?
Yeah,
seriously.
Yeah, going into the loo to do an exercise for calming and relaxing,
whilst other people are snorting cocaine off sex workers, there you are doing Qigong in the toilet. It's a funny old world, isn't it? Funny old world.
It is a funny old world. It's a beautiful world. I love it. But yeah, I mean, that was a really, really crazy, toxic time. And the next career I took on after that was as a computer consultant. I'd kind of worked when I was a young man in computing in South Africa. And then just prior to my leaving the city, they started putting computers on our desks. So I started thinking, how does this work? How does the networking work? And eventually I kind of like, almost qualified myself as a sort of a Microsoft engineer, just by my hobby, as it were. And so then I left that toxic lifestyle, went into being essentially a consultant. But I was able to then start doing Qigong classes at the same time. So maybe working 3 days a week in computing, doing classes 2 days a week, 3 evenings a week, and the two just sort of started to run together. I find it quite interesting. The odd thing about it is that when you know how to diagnose a computer, you pretty much are using the same diagnostic system for humans as well. It's kind of like a tree structure. Yeah.
Well, there's another book.
So I was diagnosing computers during the day, and
amazing stuff. Okay,
another book.
Yeah, for sure.
I should have had my book right here.
You have written a book.
I should have been able to hold my book up when you said that.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll do this again, I hope. So, have you written one, or is that the one that's going to be written?
No, I've written one already. It's called What is Qigong, available on Amazon. And I'm in the process of writing my second one.
Oh, wonderful. Now, big question, and we've only got kind of around 5 minutes to address it, but it's really interesting to me that you had that personal transformation. And I don't know what you think about him, but you've got the Gary Stevenson guy who's talking about, going from being in the money markets and being incredibly rich to how life could be, and seeing it in a different way. Like, he said a massive personal experience has changed his mind, and you have. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but there's a definite a theme of transformation going on. Do you think this is a global thing at the moment? I mean, with your colleagues that you talk to in the Qigong world, with students, with teachers, is there something collectively happening, do you think, that's making access to Qigong, these sorts of ideas, that this would have been a slightly odd conversation to have 20, 30, certainly 50 years ago. It's not a big deal anymore. I mean, it's not like everyone's doing Qigong, but it's not a difficult or awkward conversation anymore, is it? Do you think something big is changing?
Well, the first thing I would say is that this has been my conversation for 30 years, although,
Right.
yeah, most people have thought me a bit odd. Okay, so I think there's two strands to that story. I think the first one is that we've found that we've come to the end of what Western medicine can do for us as far as chronic illness is concerned.
Yeah.
And so an awful lot of people are discovering that they are going to have to not quite look after themselves, but they're going to have to look for alternatives. So an awful lot of people who come to me for kind of one-to-one sessions. So I teach Qigong as an exercise form, but I use Qigong, what is called medical Qigong therapy. So I use it actually to help people, and very often it's with cancer and diabetes, heart disease, things like that. And so people come to me when the Western journey, when they've been spat out of the back end of the Western journey,
Yep.
and then doctors have said, not much left I can suggest to you, and so, you're going to spend the rest of your days on pills, or we're going to have to cut you in half and God knows what,
Well, you've got 3 months. You've got 3 months or 6 weeks. These are the sort of situations we end up with. I totally hear you.
That's it. So that's the one side, is that people are looking for alternatives for their health. And the other side is, yes, the conversation has changed dramatically. People are now, I mean, we've seen the numbers of people in churches going down dramatically in the UK. And we've seen the numbers of people who are on a spiritual journey, let's say, going up dramatically. And so I think that people have, because of the availability of information on the internet, people have looked at the religious story and kind of thought to themselves, yes, but no, I think there's something missing there. I don't quite get it. And so a lot of people have set off on a further journey to find out what lies beyond. And so that's opened up things like Qigong to people as well. So there's two sides of it. One is looking after yourself, and the other side of it is looking for yourself.
Yes, amazing. I'm actually having a conversation with one of our regular co-host guests about. Like we're actually going to talk about God tomorrow, and you've alluded to it there. I mean, I think again, people are opening up to there being something greater than themselves. As you say, yes, but no. There's something, but it hasn't been put to them or received in the right way that makes it make sense. And then along come, you used the word, I think, at the beginning of our conversation about energy. Energy is now an acceptable sort of conversation to have, isn't it? I think with more people. Always, is that your experience?
I think so as well. And the actual way that that's worked is that we've started to adopt ideas of quantum science. And so, from Niels Bohr in 1926, that's up to the 50s when we're talking about Einstein and people like that. It's still not in common, parlance. It's still not. But from the 70s and 80s, people are starting to look at the quirky, effects of quantum science and energy, and they're beginning to think to themselves, yeah, actually, this traditional science doesn't make sense anymore, in the same way that perhaps traditional religion doesn't make sense. And so these things that have been the bedrock of our lives are now being changed by people. They're looking at them and thinking, well, okay, so now they're telling us that the whole of our universe is energy. And then suddenly I'm thinking, that was okay, that's it. That is exactly how we express everything in Qigong. In Qigong, everything is expressed as matter, information, and energy. And then you look at quantum science and it's identical. And so we suddenly find, the East and the West meshing. And so when people start to talk about energy, they're not quite sure why they are, but it's just because science has suddenly started talking about it as well.
Yeah, and we've reached a few dead ends, haven't we? I think you were suggesting there, the traditional education, traditional medicine, traditional government, all of our institutions, it would appear, have run out of options or their credibility in many ways, it would appear in recent times. So there is a thirst and a hunger to discover something new. And I suppose a lot of people, not unlike yourself and myself, you come to it sometimes, if not naturally, through some sort of crisis in your life, and then you can go off in a new direction.
And I suppose there's perhaps one other factor that I'd mention is that for the the longest time, for the last 30, 40 years, we've been talking about increasing our lifespan and how important that is. But it's in the last 5 years that we've looked at the fact that although we've increased our lifespan from 40 to 80 years, in the last 100 years, that the last 20 or 30 of our years are not good years.
No.
And so now everybody's talking about quality of life as opposed to longevity. And so I'm talking very much about longevity, which is absolutely key in Qigong. It's always been a subject in Qigong. We have these extraordinary stories about people living, well past the hundreds. I'm not going to go into that too much, but but also it's about living well. And I think that the more complex our medical system gets, the more difficult in somewhere like Portugal that it is to actually access it. The more important it is to have the insurance policy, not a paid up one with, AXA, whatever, but to have the insurance policy of knowing how to look after your body, knowing how to listen to your body. So yeah, it's about quality of living now is what we're talking about.
Music to my ears, and I'm sure a lot of other people in this community and a growing number of people, I think, in our times. To bring it all together, I think there is an openness in Portugal, and we're, haven't gone too far down the road where it's become impossible or outlawed, and as it would appear to be in some countries, like looking at things from a fresh perspective. Are you going to practice? Are you working in Portugal?
Yeah, well, all of my classes are online at the moment. So I teach on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 9:30 in the morning. But there are several spaces that I've seen around San Martino that I'm interested in, and possibly in Caldas as well. So I would love to start a physical class. But way before the pandemic, probably 3 or 4 years before the pandemic, I was teaching in a space in Bath in the southwest of the UK.
Right.
And I had, 15, 16 physical people in the class, but I also had my laptop in the middle with the camera on and had another 15, 16 people online. And so that's the idea, is that wherever I'm going to be physically teaching, I'm still going to be teaching online as well. So yeah, coming soon.
Good news. Okay, we'll put your contact details where people find this recording, if that's okay with you, and wish you all the best with the petanque in Portugal, your personal life in Portugal. I hope you're very happy here. And thank you for bringing Qigong and that philosophy. It's not so much the form, is it? It is as much the form as it's the philosophy and ideas and understanding people can develop as well.
You were just about to go for it. You were saying it's not so much the form. I agree. I don't think it's the form these days. I think it's incredibly important to have the form. The form is like a kind of a tripod on which we set. But for me, it's all about the mind activity. It's all about what I would like to call mental hygiene. It's all about finding your way to a better mindset, to a happier, mental state, as it were. And Qigong, the little tag we always put against Qigong is moving meditation. And so your body just gets used to doing the exercises. It just knows what to do. And then your mind goes lovely and quiet behind that. And that's the first step in healing, really.
Beautiful. That's right. A bit like Pascal said, wasn't it? The medicine entertains the patient while nature takes its course. It's that.
Whoa.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
That's a lovely quote. Thank you. I'll steal that immediately.
You know what? I'll check after just to make sure I've quoted him correctly there. I could have claimed it. I could have claimed it for myself. Okay, Jeremy, that's been wonderful chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Cheers.